Hey, I'm Anton Stetner. I love the game of real estate. Here with my good friend Benji Travis. We're going to hang out and talk about real estate again.
Sweet. I'm also very passionate about investing in real estate. Started as, somebody flipping houses back in 2007, actually 2006, and haven't stopped being involved. I was an agent for a brief period, and now here I am on your podcast.
Hanging out again. Thank you, my friend.
So what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today we're just going to talk about, what's kind of on everyone's mind. We're going to talk about banking, the credit crisis, what that means for buyers, sellers, investors in 2023, and where things are going.
I know that a lot of people are seeing headlines. Don't know if it's going to be like the next depression. Is it something that's just, being reported on because the media needs a story? But how serious is this for buyers in 2023, would you say, like banking crisis wise?
I think for the average buyer, this banking crisis actually means nothing. So we're talking for the average buyer, they want to go buy themselves a home. I've got, 2.5 people in my family and a dog. To them, nothing. Who this really means something to is it means something to the real estate investor. It means something to the luxury home buyer. It means something to the commercial real estate investor, because the average buyer or seller is getting a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac loan. The rest of them, though, are not going to necessarily get a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac back loan. So they're going to get what's called a non-QM qualified mortgage. Well, those people, that whole category, ultra high net worth individuals, luxury home buyers, commercial real estate buyers, and sellers for that matter, are gonna get pinched because of everything that's happening in banking right now.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good segue to what is happening, right?
Yeah.
Like, I guess let's start it off in the beginning of 2023 and what led up to the first bank failure, and then what was kind of the fallout afterwards, and then get into what the rest of 2023 looks like.
Yeah, no, I love it. As the Fed shot up interest rates, so interest rates went up, 400 basis points in 14 months.
Meaning like 4%.
4%.
We're going from like 2 or 3% to 6 and 7% in a year.
We went from like 0 to 0.5% to where we just landed at 5. That's a massive increase. And what that did, and what essentially caused this banking crisis, was banks had to take, deposits, and they had to put them into long-term assets such as treasuries or mortgage-backed securities. The problem is when you've got that on your balance sheet, that is a hold to maturity asset, which is totally fine when everything's just going up. But when the Fed raises interest rates at an epic level, historic level like they did, what then happens is they may need more deposits. And that changes the value of those assets if they had to liquidate them today. And because some depositors were running out of cash, they needed to withdraw some cash, so deposits started going down. I think another reason deposits started going down that we haven't talked a lot about is the bank was essentially paying people nothing, and they realized they could just go buy a CD or a treasury and increase their yield massively. So other things other than bank deposits became attractive. Regardless, bank deposits started going down, and so all of a sudden these banks now have these assets on their balance sheet, and they go, uh-oh, I haven't written these down. They need to be written down, and they had a credit crunch. The most famous one, of course, is Silicon Valley Bank, and they went under spectacularly, largest since WAMU. What that's done though is, so now let's fast forward. Now that we understand, okay, they got pinched, and some of their assets weren't worth what they were worth. When we're looking at it today and going, okay, what does that mean now? Very simply, what that means is that deposits are still getting smaller inside of these banks. And I think the general public needs to understand that your local community banks and those regional banks, they control about 40% of the real estate that happens in the United States. And it's mostly on that commercial debt side, so not the regular home buyer side. And so money starts leaving these community banks and these regional banks and flowing into the big boys, JP Morgan, B of A, those banks, the big five, the big six. As money leaves, these banks now have less money that they can loan out, and you can guarantee the Federal Reserve just went around and started poking everyone and stress testing them in the background. So we're getting ready to see a liquidity crisis or a credit crunch that we haven't seen in a long time.
What about 2008? Did we see it back then even?
We saw it back then, but we didn't see it at this speed, and we didn't see it for these reasons. So in 2008, what happened there was we had toxic assets that were underperforming because the market was dropping. So our real estate market, it squished a little bit, right? And we all saw it. We all felt it. It squished a little bit. But these assets still have value. And when the Federal Reserve made the mistake of keeping interest rates too low for too long, what that did was that brought too much liquidity, too much frothiness to the system. And so that spread itself out. And of course, during COVID, we just turned on the money printers to go and injected trillions of dollars into the system. What they're doing now is they're essentially clawing that back. But this credit crisis, the reason it's so different is that these are performing assets. These depositors still have money, but the number of available loans is going to start to pinch. And then also you have to think about how a commercial asset performs. So a commercial asset in real estate is worth what based on the income it makes. So commercial assets operate off of what's called a cap rate. A cap rate is simply what's the net operating income divided by the value. And as debt got really cheap, we saw cap rate compression, which when cap rates go down, the value of the real estate goes up. So now you have the cost of the debt shooting up. You have cap rate expansion to make up for the cost of the debt. And you have some of the highest office vacancies because of work from home, COVID.
Crazy. Like in downtown Seattle,
Yep.
I just came from there. Tons of vacancies in the busiest parts of town.
In the busiest parts of
Even
town.
after post-pandemic. That's what's nuts about it.
And we're doing better than San Fran.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
So commercial debt. So you and I, we go get a mortgage, and as a regular home buyer, you can get 30-year debt locked up. When you go get a commercial debt, that commercial debt renews every 5 years. And it usually is amortized on maybe a 20-year, 20 or 30-year run. But every 5 years, you have to renew it. Well, if I have debt from 5 years ago, I probably have 3.5% commercial debt. And then all of a sudden, if that's coming due in 23 or due in 24, that commercial debt is now 6.5, 7.5, maybe even 8.5. I called 29 different banks the other day hunting for debt, and I was barely able to find like a 6.75, and everyone else was averaging 7.5. So
Hunting for like a loan for your project.
hunting for a cash out refi on a commercial property.
Got it.
Which is like, that's the kiss of death right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, good luck. But going back to that example, so what's happening is that commercial debt was just 3. And if my note is due in 24, I've got to now re-up it at 6, which dramatically changes my financials, which dramatically changes the value. So we haven't seen this start to come out yet, but that's going to cause the pinch. The vacancies in office, the vacancies in the office space, mark my words, are going to affect every part of commercial, multifamily, industrial, retail, gas stations, everything. And people go, no, that's just office. They're all boats in the same harbor. It's going to cause problems. And then the other part that's causing the problems, of course, is the debt coming due and pressure on rent. So rent growth has slowed down, and you're seeing it in the office space. You're seeing it in the multifamily space. The bright sector is industrial. Industrial still outperforming everyone, and we think that's going to continue. But we do believe that the boat anchor is going to be high mortgages, the credit pinch, and the lower rents or lease rates that's happening throughout 23. So my advice to commercial people, start working on your debt now. Because if I have debt coming due, in 23, I need to get ahead of it. I may have to go find some private equity, and maybe I got to chop off a little percentage of my building in order to make this. But don't wait. The mistake people made in 2008. So I worked for I worked for builders, developers, investors, heading right into 2008. And it was, shooting up like a rocket in 2006 and 2007. And you could see the writing sitting on the wall. And they're like, no, it's going to get better. No, we'll just deal with this debt later. That was the kiss of death. When that debt problem arises or that credit pinch hits you, go attack the problem head on. And those of you who are listening and you've got lines of credit, you might want to tap that line.
Well, human behavior is to avoid it, right?
Yes.
Almost be in denial. And this is where it gets worse and worse if you do wait, because everyone is kind of doing that,
Yep.
Majority. So the wisdom isn't just get ahead of it, but if you do wait, it compounds because there's going to be even more competition, right? For the limited loans out there, the refinances that are available. And then
if the money supply and the credit supply is dwindling, you need to be the first one on the ship before it sinks or sails away from you.
there's going to be a lot of selling away like 2, 3, 4 years from now.
And the average homeowner, who cares? This doesn't hurt you at all. If you want to go buy a property and you can afford it at today's interest rates, absolutely go do it. For the small investor, my recommendation to you, don't be worried about it. Just increase your cash reserves a little bit, maybe put a little more down. Waiting for the smaller investor is the kiss of death, because then they wait, and they miss the opportunity on the upside on the real estate.
What about the big investor, the ones that this is kind of their business, or maybe this is the way they create cash flow or income? What should they be considering and maybe doing this year or maybe even next?
I think the big investor needs to buckle up. This is not the small investor's problem, the medium investor's problem. This is big boy, big girl problems. And they need to buckle up, and they need to bring down their LTV on everything, their loan to value, in case they have to refinance. They need to take their cash reserves from 6 months to maybe 12 months. They need to look at their global cash position and increase global cash flow. Even if they have to sacrifice good assets, don't wait. There are no sacred cows when things like this are happening. Burn the ship, keep the best ships, keep the fastest ships, load up on your gold and cash, and keep moving.
Yeah, it's kind of scary listening to that, because it's almost as if there was a crisis happening right now. But what you're trying to say is take care of the mess before you fall into the trap that everyone else is, which is everyone's trying to deal with it at the same time.
Not to use maybe a bad analogy, but this is the actual Titanic in front of us. Commercial real estate is the Titanic. We can see the iceberg, we know the problems, and we're just going really slow towards that iceberg right now. For those who are willing to get in front of it, they will be fine. But the people who avoid what's happening, if you have debt coming due in the next 24 months, figure it out now. If your cash reserves are not greater than 6 months, get them up. Get your loan to values down. Keep your best performing assets. Unload the dogs or the painful ones now. And especially if it's in that office category. I'm very anti-office today.
Well, a lot of people too have their home office still. So the transition away from it might not be as hard, so it might happen faster. I want to ask on behalf of the investors that are maybe the medium size or even the smaller guys that like maybe are ready, because every time there is a downturn, there's also an opportunity. Maybe some of these bigger people don't have as much debt in commercial right now, or maybe they already took care of it. They hit the height and they sold it off. What's the opportunity the next 3, 6, even 18 months out for commercial or just big time investors?
I think for that medium investor, so big time investors always have cash though. So even though we're saying, hey, pay attention, the ones who have cash will be totally fine and they'll do what they've always done.
But why would they be fine? What's the opportunities for them?
The opportunities for them is I got a call yesterday for a 250 unit apartment building in Brownsville, Texas. And the local community bank who is financing it said, hey, these guys aren't going to finish it. You want it? And at first I was like, I wonder who gave them my name, number one. Number two, I was like, yeah, we want it. Send it over. Let's take a look at it. Don't know what condition it's in. They didn't give me anything. It was just simply a phone call. That's the opportunity for those medium and large investors, is they will come behind these people that are experiencing that credit crunch, and they'll come and clean up the problem. So I think your biggest opportunity, and this is for small investors too, by the way, I think your small, medium, and large investor, the most money over the next year will be made cleaning up other people's problems, solving things that feel a little more tough than usual, working outside the box, being creative, solving problems. That's where you're going to make a ton of money over the next year.
What's the top 3 ways for people to keep their eye out and be able to know where these deals are, or to be the person that gets the deal presented to them? What's the top 3 ways to position yourself for that receiving?
Well, you have to have cash or the network, number one. So either your network has to have the money or you need the money. So someone needs the money. And then I think 2 and 3 would be, you have to present yourself as the individual who solves these problems. I'm known as the developer investor who solves other people's problems. So what they do is they present them to me. Hey, we're foreclosing on this. What do you think we can get for it? P.S. So they say it in 2 ways. It's really funny. Hey, we're foreclosing on this. Hey, P.S. Do you guys want to buy it? Do you know someone that wants to buy it? So they're always asking for your opinion and your advice, while also they kind of poach you. Like, you guys want to buy this thing right here so we can get off our balance sheet? And then I think social media is probably one of your strongest ways. Maybe to add number 4 would be to dig into your own network. Even people who don't think they have a network are underutilizing their network. There are people inside of your network right now that are connected to the right people who can get you what we're talking about. And so one thing that you should probably do is figure out who the top 200 people are in your network. You should pick up the phone and call them and say something like this. Hey, Benji, it's Anton. I'm calling all of my trusted friends, advisors right now because I know market conditions are changing. If you know of someone or a financial institution or an investor who gets stuck in something, let me know. 1, I will answer all of your questions or their questions at any time for free. 2, if you need someone to buy it, we can take care of that.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question is because 2 things. 1, when you're going through some kind of investment distress or hard times, you're not immediately vocalizing it. It's easy to vocalize your successes, right? But when things aren't going so good, you don't go on to Facebook and say, hey, this is my problem. So it's hard to find those deals. But secondly, say you're new to the industry too. So if people aren't vocalizing it, posting about their problems,
go hunt it down.
How do you hunt it down, right?
Yeah,
like
I love
you
it.
see, like there's two sides to this.
Yeah.
Now, the ultimate answer is find an Anton, right? Which
Yeah.
obviously people can work with you. But say you're listening to this in a different part of the country, or maybe you are an agent. How do you facilitate the receiving from these people, as well as
let's use multifamily for an example.
Yep.
Go pull all the multifamily in your local city or county that was purchased in the last 5 years. And if it was purchased, 5 years ago, assume they have 5-year debt coming up if they still hold it right now. Okay, so maybe we look for things that are 4 years out and they have a 5, because they're going to have a 5 or a 7 or a 10, and call every single one of those multifamilies. Send them a letter and say, hey, we purchase multifamily properties. Let us know if you're possibly interested in selling them. The other thing you could do is you could go to your local city or county and get a list of every permit, every development project that's been submitted. And it's the exact same thing. You just call through and letter every single one of those people, and you say, hey, Benji, my name's Anton. I see you have a project at 123 Main Street. I see this development project was submitted 2 years ago. What's your plans for it? And I think by simply putting yourself out there, you're going to find a lot of it. What a lot of people are looking for, they're looking for a magic bullet. What I'm talking about is work.
Work, yeah.
It's a lot of work, because you're going to have to go put 500, 1,000 people on, suspects onto this list. And then you're going to have to work through this list 5 times, 10 times, 20 times in order to get a feel for those golden nuggets. So obviously, if you can build it through social media or your network, that's going to be the quickest route. Well, if you can't, then you've got to go hunt it down. And hunting it down is just simply planning for gold. You could also look at notice of trustee sales. Look at the notice of trustee sales. So a lot of people just look at it on single family. Go look at it for all the multifamily 5 units and above. Go look at it and a lot of the commercial debt too, like in Washington State, I'm just going to use as an example, gets foreclosed on different than our residential debt. So that goes to a sheriff's sale in the state of Washington because it's a commercial foreclosure. So in that particular example, you just have to go figure out what sheriff's sales are coming. Here's a list of distressed assets right there. Every single one of those is going to get figured out one way or another.
Totally. The one thing I remember from the last crisis, 2008 financial crisis, and real estate is you want to be a problem solver. You mentioned this earlier, because these people have these grand plans of this is not going to be a headache. It's going to cash flow. I'm going to make a lot of money. And so when those plans change, typically there's also other issues they might be dealing with. So they just put it on the back burner, or they're maybe in denial, or they're too overwhelmed to figure it out for themselves. So if you're the agent or even just an investor that's like, hey, give me your problem, I will figure it out. And then on the other side, as agents, right, even investors, I'd say the same, but agents specifically, it was fairly easy to be successful compared to, the average time in history for a real estate agent. So there's going to be a lot of people that quit. If you're the one, like you mentioned, willing to put in the work, make the phone calls, go look up records, right? Dialing for dollars, I say, like it's not for donations, but like you're looking for deals. You put the two together, and if you build that reputation, the next decade could literally be the best decade for you if you're that person.
Wealth will be created over the next 24 months. We've made money over the last 3 years. Like if you put in the work, you can get a comma or a 0 right now. That's the crazy thing. But it's a lot of hard work. And it's also putting yourself out there and I need to flip this over for a second, because even if it's an investor, they're still a human. So it's also about having empathy for their situation and what we call care and candor. I care for you, and yet I need to be candid about this problem, and here's how we could solve it. Because at the end of the day, even if it's a $10 million project, there's still humans behind it. So don't lose that human element, because that human element is what allows you to put together great deals. Go in a discovery mode. Don't go in attacking. When you go in discovery mode in these bigger deals, you get more of the pieces of the puzzle, and that allows you to put together a better deal that's actually more win-win for all parties involved, yourself included.
Yeah, and to land the plane here, but just before that, the care and candor part. Care enough to reach out and to ask people questions.
Yep.
And give them answers if they need, but be candid and be upfront. Don't beat around the bush,
Yep.
right? Don't try to say something just to make them happy, because this is the number one mistake agents make. Because if you do, they might not like the news or the information you share them now, but if you are correct, even if they go with somebody else that's telling them fluff and
Yep.
just trying to get their business but doesn't work out, they're going to remember that.
Yep.
And you're starting to build your reputation.
Bingo.
It's not just what you're trying to do in the next 6 months, but what you're trying to accomplish in 6 years. So that is going to be probably more valuable now
Yes.
than in the last 10 years when
Yes.
we were just on up. And it was just basically sign right here. Well, I'll sell it. We're going to both make money.
This is the market, once again, as the investor, as the agent. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. It's the same thing, where you've got to dissect it. You've got to get into the numbers. But in addition to the numbers, you have to understand how the problem was created and how to create a viable working solution for them, for the lien holder, for maybe some contractor liens on the property, whatever it may be. This is the, let's get creative. Like, go back to all the old school real estate stuff that you've ever heard about. That's what we're going to do over the next 24 months.
Yeah, old school, like prior to 2004.
I'm talking 70s and 80s, owner financing, asking people to carry seconds, third mortgages, cross-collateralization of debt, option agreements, rights of first refusal. On Monday, we're going to make an offer to buy a note out of foreclosure, but we're not going to close on it. So we're making a purchase and sale agreement subject to the bank foreclosing on a development project and guaranteeing them that the second they have title, we'll close on it 10 days later. That way they don't have to have it on their balance sheet as a non-performing asset, because as soon as they take it, it performs.
Because you're getting the deals. People are calling you. So what you're saying is they should call you.
I'm
if they're
saying
either party.
Yes, yeah. So always call us. We're happy to solve your problems. And for you that are listening, be the expert and understand your niche so that you are the person they call that can solve their problem, and you're known for that. And that's where so much opportunity is created. See, when a market is going vertical or up, everything's kind of easier. Now that we've hit some bumps and some turbulence, this is where the real people shake out and their expertise shines through. And so let's say you're a beginner, you're brand new, like you just started. I just started in real estate investing in 2023. Then your job is to know your market, know the numbers associated with the type of the deal that you do, put together your buy box, put together your criteria. That way, when a deal comes your way, you can execute quickly, whether that's a duplex or a development project for 80 duplexes. Because at the end of the day, it should just be math and not emotional decisions. But in this market, ideally, you'd get presented the 80 duplexes and they started the development, then they ran out of money. And so maybe you can go in and buy out 80% of the partners or 60% of the partners inside the LLC, take over control of it in order to finish it. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Like, welcome to the wild, wild west of real estate.
There you go. So if people need your help or have questions, how do they connect with you? What's like the best way for them to reach out?
Our website is resg.com, and that's one of the quickest ways to get to us. You can find me on every social media platform. Send me a DM. Happy to chat.
Sweet. 2023 is going to be fun.
We're going to make a bunch of money.